In a bustling animal shelter on the outskirts of town, two forgotten dogs sat in separate kennels, each trapped in their own silent world. The constant commotion of visitors passing by meant nothing to either of them. One couldn't see the hopeful faces peering in, while the other couldn't hear the sympathetic words spoken. They were two broken pieces seemingly destined for a life of limitation, overlooked time and again as potential adopters sought pets without special needs. Their kennels stood just 10 feet apart, yet they existed in entirely different realities, separated not just by metal gates but by the invisible barriers of their disabilities. Max, the blind golden retriever with a graying muzzle, would constantly bump into his water bowl, his cloudy eyes staring vacantly at walls. His once confident stride had been reduced to hesitant steps, paws tapping uncertainly at the ground before each movement. Shelter workers would find him curled in the same corner each morning, afraid to explore the small space that remained his entire world. Despite his gentle disposition, his medical chart marked with "blind" in bold red letters seemed to doom him to a life within shelter walls. Luna, the deaf border collie mix with striking black and white markings, remained oblivious to the barking chaos that surrounded her each day. When thunderstorms rolled through, she slept peacefully while other dogs trembled in fear. Her bright eyes constantly scanned her surroundings, hyper-alert to every visual change, yet she would startle violently when touched without warning. Her previous family had surrendered her, claiming they couldn't handle a dog that wouldn't come when called, a dog that would never hear her name, no matter how loudly they shouted it. Most shelter animals with disabilities were paired with able-bodied companions when possible, but resources were stretched thin, and space was limited. What happened next was born more of necessity than inspiration. Sarah, the kennel manager with 15 years of experience, made a fateful decision that would change the course of these animals' lives forever. Instead of struggling alone as most disabled shelter animals do, these two unlikely companions would discover something remarkable, a bond that would transform their disabilities into something extraordinary. When shelter staff finally introduced them in a small exercise yard, no one could have anticipated the incredible system they would develop to navigate the world together. At first, there was the expected hesitation, Max's nose working overtime to identify the new presence, Luna's eyes tracking his every movement. Then came a moment that left the watching staff speechless. Luna deliberately bumped her body against Max's side when he was about to walk into a bench. He paused, adjusted his course, and proceeded forward with newfound confidence, while she stayed pressed against him like a living guide rail. Over the days that followed, their interactions grew more intricate. Their paws would touch in ways that seemed almost choreographed, creating a dance of communication that defied explanation. Luna would tap Max's shoulder with her nose to signal a turn, while Max would bark with surprising precision whenever someone approached from behind, sounds Luna couldn't hear but could feel through the vibrations against her paws. It was as though they had created their own language, one that bypassed their disabilities entirely. The shelter staff watched in amazement, documenting every interaction. How could a blind dog and a deaf dog possibly help each other? And what could their remarkable partnership teach us about overcoming life's greatest challenges? The answer would astonish even the most experienced animal behaviorists and change everything we thought we knew about how animals adapt to disabilities. Their story wasn't just about survival or companionship, it was about two beings finding completeness in each other's brokenness, creating something greater than either could achieve alone. Max was no stranger to darkness, having lost his sight gradually over the course of 2 years. His previous owners, a retired couple who had cherished him for 7 years, had made the heartbreaking decision to surrender him after the husband's stroke made caring for a blind dog too challenging. The shelter records indicated that Max had been diagnosed with progressive retinal atrophy, a degenerative condition that had slowly dimmed his world until even shadows disappeared. Despite his disability, Max had retained the gentle temperament golden retrievers were known for, patient, loving, and eternally optimistic even when his paws found nothing but walls and obstacles. Oak Ridge Animal Shelter had housed Max for nearly 4 months. The staff had developed routines to help him navigate his kennel, never moving his food and water bowls, speaking to him before entering his space, and using scented markers to help him identify different areas. Sarah, the kennel manager who had worked with dozens of special needs animals throughout her career, had a particular soft spot for the aging retriever. She would often sit beside his kennel during her lunch breaks, reading aloud from whatever novel she was enjoying that week. Max couldn't see her, but he would rest his head against the kennel door, ears perked forward, finding comfort in her voice amid the disorienting darkness. Luna's story began differently. Born completely deaf to a border collie mother and an unknown father, she had been adopted as a puppy by a family charmed by her striking markings and energetic personality. For 2 years, she had been a beloved pet, but as she matured, her inability to respond to verbal commands became increasingly problematic for her owners. Without proper training methods for deaf dogs, they found themselves frustrated by her seeming disobedience. The final straw came when Luna, oblivious to approaching traffic sounds, darted into the street and was nearly hit by a car. Claiming they couldn't handle the responsibility of a special needs dog, they surrendered her to Oakridge. Luna had been at the shelter for 3 months, her intelligence and energy making her both a staff favorite and a management challenge. Unlike Max, who moved cautiously through his environment, Luna approached everything with boundless enthusiasm. Her keen vision compensated for her hearing loss, her eyes constantly tracking movement with remarkable focus. The staff had begun teaching her hand signals, and she proved to be a quick study, demonstrating the border collie's legendary aptitude for learning. Yet her inability to hear made her easily startled, sometimes resulting in defensive barking when she was surprised by a touch she hadn't seen coming. The shelter itself was a modest facility on the edge of town, housed in a renovated warehouse with concrete floors and chain-link kennels. What it lacked in luxury, it made up for in compassionate care. The dedicated staff worked miracles with limited resources, turning the industrial space into a haven for abandoned and surrendered animals. A small fenced yard behind the building provided space for exercise and training, while a cramped but functional medical room allowed for basic veterinary care. The shelter had developed a reputation for taking in special needs animals when other facilities wouldn't, a point of pride that sometimes strained their budget to the breaking point. It had been an ordinary Tuesday morning when overcrowding forced Sarah to make a difficult decision. A local hoarding case had resulted in 15 new dogs arriving overnight, and kennel space had suddenly become precious. Standard protocol was to house special needs animals separately to accommodate their specific requirements, but with new arrivals filling every available space, Sarah faced an impossible choice. Looking at the shelter map spread across her cluttered desk, her eyes fell on Max's kennel and then Luna's, just a few spaces down. Both needed special accommodation, both had been overlooked by adopters time and again. Perhaps, she thought, they could share a space temporarily, just until the hoarding case dogs could be processed and moved to foster homes. What began as a space-saving necessity would soon reveal itself to be something far more significant. That afternoon, Sarah attached Max's leash and guided him carefully down the concrete aisle. "You're going to have a roommate for a while, buddy," she told him, not expecting the blind dog to understand but speaking in the soothing tone that always seemed to calm him. Luna watched their approach with alert eyes, head tilted in curiosity as Sarah opened the kennel door. No one could have predicted that this practical solution to an overcrowding problem would be the beginning of an extraordinary partnership, one that would eventually challenge everything veterinarians and animal behaviorists thought they knew about canine adaptation and interspecies communication. Sarah stood at the kennel door, one hand firmly gripping Max's leash, the other poised on the latch. Her heart beat a little faster than usual. Introducing dogs was always unpredictable, and with these particular disabilities, the encounter seemed especially fraught with potential problems. The kennel's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the concrete floor as she hesitated, reconsidering the decision she'd made out of necessity. How would a blind dog and a deaf dog even begin to understand each other? Max couldn't see Luna's body language, and Luna couldn't hear Max's warning growls if he felt threatened. The typical canine communication systems they relied on seemed fundamentally broken before they'd even met. "This is either going to be a disaster or a miracle," she murmured to her colleague Jason, who stood ready with a spray bottle, a gentle deterrent if things went sideways. He nodded, his expression mirroring her concern. Around them, the shelter hummed with the usual cacophony of barking, the clatter of food bowls, and the squeak of volunteers' rubber-soled shoes on the concrete floor. Luna, alert as always, had spotted them immediately, her black and white body pressed against the chain link, vibrating with the intensity typical of her border collie heritage. Unlike other dogs who might bark at newcomers, she remained silent, her disability rendering her unaware of the approach of the golden retriever who would change her life. Taking a deep breath, Sarah finally unlatched the gate and guided Max inside. The blind dog moved cautiously, nose twitching rapidly as he processed the sense of this unfamiliar space. His cloudy eyes stared vacantly ahead, unseeing but somehow still conveying a gentle intelligence. "Easy, Max," Sarah soothed, though she knew his temperament was steady. 7 years as a family pet before his surrender had given him a solid foundation of socialization, and even his blindness hadn't diminished his fundamental good nature. Luna's reaction was immediate and unexpected. Rather than the wariness or overexcitement the staff had anticipated, she went completely still, her usually restless body frozen in observation. Her head tilted sharply to one side, eyes fixed on Max with an intensity that suggested she recognized something different about him. Unlike the confident shelter workers or the other dogs she'd encountered, this newcomer moved differently, hesitantly, his paws shuffling slightly as if feeling his way through an unseen maze. Max stopped a few feet inside the kennel, his nose still working overtime to catalog every scent. His ears flicked forward at the subtle sounds of Luna's movement, the slight scrape of claws on concrete, the soft rustle of fur. Sarah maintained a gentle tension on the leash, ready to guide him back if necessary, while Jason stood vigilant by the door. The moment stretched, suspended in possibility, as everyone waited to see how these two uniquely challenged animals would respond to each other. It was Luna who finally broke the standoff. With a deliberate slowness uncharacteristic of her usually boundless energy, she approached Max from the side, careful to stay within his sensitive range of smell. The golden retriever tensed slightly, sensing movement, his tail giving a tentative wag, neither fully welcoming nor defensive. Sarah and Jason exchanged worried glances. This was the critical moment, the point where introductions could turn bad in the blink of an eye. Luna stopped just inches from Max, her eyes still studying him with that peculiar intensity. Then, with a gentleness that made Sarah's breath catch, she pressed her shoulder against his, a physical greeting that substituted for the vocal one she couldn't hear. Max startled slightly, then relaxed, turning his head toward her, nose nearly touching her fur as he inhaled her scent more deeply. His tail began to wag more confidently, and impossibly, Luna's began to match its rhythm. "I don't believe it," Jason whispered, lowering the spray bottle. "It's like they already know what the other needs." Sarah nodded, throat tight with unexpected emotion. "Look at how she's positioning herself, always where he can sense her." Indeed, Luna seemed intuitively aware of Max's limitations, staying close enough that her body heat and scent remained a constant presence to the blind dog's heightened senses. And Max, in turn, moved with unexpected confidence now that he had this anchor beside him. After 15 minutes of careful observation, Sarah finally released Max's leash, allowing him complete freedom within the shared space. The two dogs maintained their curious connection, Luna guiding Max to the water bowl with gentle body bumps, Max standing patiently as Luna circled and investigated him with her keen eyes. There was none of the typical dominance posturing or territorial marking that often complicated new introductions. Instead, they seemed to be working out a silent agreement, an unspoken pact between two beings who had found something essential in each other. As Sarah finally stepped out of the kennel, closing the gate behind her, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just witnessed something profound. These weren't just two dogs tolerating a temporary housing situation, they were filling gaps in each other's worlds, creating something whole from their individual brokenness. She grabbed her notebook from the supply shelf, jotting quick observations that would later become the foundation of a case study that would capture the attention of animal behaviorists across the country. That night, when she checked on them during final rounds, she found them curled together in the corner of the kennel, Luna's body curved protectively around Max's, her eyes opening alertly at Sarah's approach while Max slept on, secure in a darkness that for the first time since his surrender, might not have felt so empty. It was in that moment, watching the deaf dog maintain vigilant watch over her blind companion, that Sarah first understood what was happening. They weren't just adapting to each other, they were becoming a perfectly complementary system, each one's strength compensating for the other's weakness in a living demonstration of adaptation that would soon inspire everyone who witnessed it. The morning after their introduction, Sarah arrived at the shelter earlier than usual, eager to check on the unlikely pair. Walking through the quiet building, most dogs still drowsy in the early dawn light, she found Max and Luna already awake. What she witnessed made her pause mid-step, clipboard clutched to her chest. Luna was systematically guiding Max around their shared kennel, using gentle body nudges to help him map the space. The border collie would bump her body against his whenever he veered too close to the water bowl or the kennel walls, providing a living boundary that kept him from collisions. Max, for his part, seemed to be memorizing the layout, his steps already more confident than they had been the previous day. "Jason, you have to see this," Sarah whispered to her colleague as he arrived for his shift. Together they observed the morning routine, taking notes as Luna guided Max to his food bowl, waiting patiently as he ate, then leading him to the water. The usual chaos of morning feeding was happening all around them, dogs barking excitedly, volunteers chattering as they distributed kibble, but in this one kennel, a synchronized dance was unfolding with quiet precision. It's not just that they're getting along, Jason observed. They're actively helping each other. I've never seen anything like it. The real test came that afternoon, when Sarah decided to take the pair to the exercise yard, a fenced outdoor space with grass, a few agility obstacles, and various toys. This environment would be less controlled than the kennel, with more stimuli and challenges. Would their budding system of communication hold up in a more complex setting? Sarah attached leashes to both dogs, noting how Luna automatically positioned herself where Max could sense her presence, and guided them through the building. The moment they stepped outside, new complexities arose. The yard's uneven terrain immediately challenged Max's balance. He hesitated at the threshold, nose twitching nervously as he sensed the change from concrete to grass. Luna, typically eager to run when released into the open space, surprised everyone by remaining steadfastly at Max's side. She matched his cautious pace, pressing against him when his paws met an unexpected dip in the ground. When a squirrel darted across the fence line, a distraction that would normally send a border collie into a frenzy of excitement, Luna merely tracked it with her eyes, her body remaining a steady guide for her blind companion. She's suppressing her natural instincts to accommodate him, Dr. Elena Reyes, the shelter's consulting veterinarian, remarked. She had come to observe the pair after hearing about their unusual bond from Sarah. And look at how he's responding to her subtle cues, the slight pressure against his shoulder when they need to turn, how he pauses when she stops. They're developing their own language. Max, meanwhile, was showing abilities that had seemed lost since his blindness progressed. With Luna as his guide, he navigated around a plastic pool, avoided a jutting tree root, and even managed to find a tennis ball that had been left in the grass. His nose led him to the toy, but it was Luna's presence that gave him the confidence to explore. When he picked up the ball, Luna's tail wagged with what looked remarkably like pride. The staff began documenting specific signals that were emerging between the two dogs. Luna had developed at least 4 distinct types of body bumps, a gentle pressure against Max's side that meant, stop, a firmer nudge that indicated, turn, a playful bump with her nose that invited interaction, and a full body lean. That seemed to reassure him during moments of stress. Max, for his part, had begun using different barks and whines, sounds that Luna couldn't hear but could feel through vibration when pressed against him. A single sharp bark would make her look up and scan their surroundings, while a low whine brought her immediately to his side. It's like they've created a tactile language, Sarah noted in her growing file of observations. Luna uses her body to draw maps for Max, and he uses sound vibrations to alert her to things she can't see. The most remarkable development occurred during the 3rd week of their shared housing. Sarah had brought the pair to the exercise yard as had become their daily routine. The day was clear but windy, with strong gusts occasionally sweeping across the open space. As they walked along the fence line, a sudden powerful gust sent an empty plastic bucket tumbling across the yard directly toward them. Luna, with her back to the approaching object, couldn't see it coming. Max, however, immediately tensed and gave 2 sharp, staccato barks, a sound they'd never documented before. Luna instantly froze, her body alert, eyes scanning quickly until she spotted the rolling bucket. She shifted position, placing herself between the object and Max, her body communicating the danger to him while her eyes tracked its path. Sarah watched, astounded, as the bucket rolled harmlessly past them. "Did you see that?" she asked Jason, who was recording the interaction on his phone. He warned her about something she couldn't see, and she understood exactly what he meant. "It's more than just adapting to each other's disabilities," Jason replied, his voice tinged with wonder. "They're actually better together than either would be with a non-disabled companion. Max can hear things approaching from any direction, and Luna can see everything in front of them. They've created a complete sensory picture between them." As the days passed, shelter visitors began to notice the extraordinary pair. People who came looking to adopt would stop at their kennel, watching in fascination as Luna guided Max through their daily activities, or as Max alerted Luna to approaching people she couldn't hear coming. The staff had begun keeping a dedicated journal, documenting new communications as they developed. Reyes had even reached out to colleagues at the university's veterinary program, inviting them to observe what she called an unprecedented case of complementary adaptation. Yet for all the scientific interest their bond was generating, perhaps the most profound change was the simplest: both dogs were thriving. Max, once so hesitant and withdrawn, now moved with a confidence that belied his blindness. Luna, whose nervous energy had often manifested as anxiety, had found purpose in her role as guide and protector. Their disabilities, once seen as limitations that made them unadoptable, had become the very foundation of a remarkable partnership. In their shared kennel, where once there had been two broken pieces, there was now something whole, a living system of communication and care that transcended the boundaries of their individual challenges. More than just surviving together, they were showing everyone who witnessed their bond what was possible when differences became strengths, when limitations became invitations to adapt, and when two beings found in each other exactly what they needed to navigate a world that had once seemed impossibly challenging. Sarah, watching them settle together for the night, Luna's ever-vigilant eyes the last to close, Max's sensitive ears twitching even in sleep, felt a bittersweet pride. They had created something beautiful and profound, these two discarded dogs with their complementary disabilities. Now the question that weighed on her was both professional and deeply personal. Having brought them together, how could she ensure they would never be separated again? Word of Max and Luna's remarkable partnership had begun to spread beyond the shelter walls. What had started as Sarah's desperate solution to an overcrowding problem had evolved into something that drew increasing attention from animal behaviorists, veterinarians, and even local media. 4 weeks after their first introduction, Dr. Elena Reyes arrived with Dr. Marcus Chen, a professor of animal behavior from the State University, and his graduate student Amira Patel. They came equipped with cameras, notebooks, and a carefully designed observation protocol, intent on documenting what Dr. Chen called a potential breakthrough in our understanding of interspecies communication and adaptive behavior. The small research team set up in the exercise yard, positioning cameras at different angles to capture the dogs' interactions from multiple perspectives. Sarah brought Max and Luna outside, releasing them from their leashes once inside the fenced area. By now, the dogs moved as a single unit, their bodies rarely more than a few inches apart. Luna guided Max with practiced precision, while he remained attuned to sounds beyond her range of awareness. "Remarkable," Dr. Chen murmured, adjusting his glasses as he watched Luna use her body to steer Max away from a muddy patch. "They've developed what appears to be a sophisticated haptic communication system, communication through touch." Amira, the graduate student, was carefully cataloging each interaction. "I've documented at least 7 distinct physical signals from Luna so far," she reported, her pencil moving rapidly across her notebook. "There's a clear pattern to how she uses her body to communicate different messages. It's almost like a tactile sign language." Reyes nodded, her gaze fixed on the pair as they navigated toward a ball that Sarah had rolled across the yard. "What's truly extraordinary is how they've each adapted their strongest senses to compensate for the other's deficit. Max's hearing has become even more acute since his vision loss, a common neuroplastic adaptation, and he's using that heightened sense to protect Luna from sounds she can't detect." As if on cue, Max stopped suddenly, his ears perked forward. A delivery truck had pulled into the shelter's parking lot, the rumble of its engine too distant for the humans to notice but well within Max's sensitive hearing range. Luna, responding to the subtle tension in his body, immediately looked in the direction his ears were pointing, her eyes scanning for potential danger. Satisfied there was no immediate threat, she nudged Max gently, guiding him back to their exploration. "Did you catch that?" Amira asked excitedly. He alerted, she looked, assessed, then communicated back. "That's a complete information exchange without either of them using the sense the other lacks." Dr. Chen was filming the interaction, his expression one of fascinated concentration. "We're witnessing the emergence of a novel communication system that bypasses their individual sensory limitations. I've studied animal behavior for 20 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this level of complementary adaptation." Over the course of the afternoon, the research team conducted a series of gentle tests, designed not to stress the dogs but to better understand the parameters of their communication. They placed new objects in the yard to observe how Luna would guide Max around them. They created unexpected sounds to document how Max would alert Luna through body vibrations she could feel. With each new challenge, the dog's remarkable system grew more apparent. "Look at how he positions himself whenever something new enters their environment," Dr. Reyes pointed out. He's always on her deaf side, where he can hear what she can't. And she always stands on his left, compensating for the eye that's completely blind, while his right eye still has minimal light perception. Sarah, watching from the sideline, felt a surge of pride mixed with growing concern. The more special these dogs proved to be, the more she worried about their future. They were no longer just two unadoptable animals with disabilities, they were becoming subjects of scientific interest, their bond something to be studied and quantified. Yet underlying all the academic fascination was a simple truth: they needed each other, and they needed a permanent home that would respect their extraordinary connection. As the research session continued, new dimensions of their communication emerged. Luna had developed a specific sequence of movements she used when guiding Max through complex environments: a gentle pressure against his shoulder to indicate a turn was coming, followed by a more insistent nudge in the direction they needed to go, then a body check that meant, "Stop here." Max had equally sophisticated signals, using different pitches and durations of vocalizations that Luna could feel rather than hear. "I'd like to run a quick experiment, Dr. Chen said, turning to Sarah. "Do you have a simple maze or obstacle course we could set up? Something with multiple pathways and decision points." The shelter staff quickly assembled a makeshift obstacle course using plastic cones, low hurdles from the agility equipment, and several cardboard boxes. The arrangement created a simple maze with multiple paths, some leading to dead ends, others to a small bowl containing treats. The researchers wanted to see if Luna could not only guide Max through the physical space but actually help him make navigationally complex decisions. Sarah brought the dogs to the entrance of the maze, then stepped back to give them space. Luna surveyed the setup, her intelligent eyes taking in the various paths and obstacles. Max stood beside her, nose working to process the unfamiliar arrangement of objects, ears swiveling to capture any useful sounds. For a moment, they simply stood together, as if formulating a plan. What happened next left even the skeptical Dr. Chen shaking his head in amazement. Luna guided Max into the maze with confident nudges, but instead of simply leading him through by the most direct route, she seemed to be communicating information about the overall structure. At one junction, she paused, allowing Max to explore with his nose in multiple directions. He sniffed down one path, then another, before giving a short, low bark. Luna immediately guided him down the third option, the correct path toward the treats. "They're problem-solving together," Amira whispered, her pen hovering above her notebook. "She's giving him spatial information, and he's contributing scent data. They're pooling their sensory information." Dr. Reyes nodded, her professional demeanor momentarily broken by a smile of pure delight. "It's not just about physical guidance anymore. They're making joint decisions based on their combined sensory input." When the dogs successfully reached the treats at the end of the maze, Luna waited patiently for Max to eat first, her body positioned protectively between him and the watching humans. Only when he had finished did she take her share, her eyes never ceasing their vigilant scanning of the environment. "I think what we're seeing goes beyond adaptive behavior," Dr. Chen said as they wrapped up the session. "These dogs have developed what could be considered a rudimentary form of culture, shared knowledge and communication protocols that emerge from their interaction. It's not just instinct or conditioning, they're actively creating a system that works for their specific needs." As the research team packed up their equipment, discussing plans for more structured observations and possible publication of their findings, Sarah knelt beside Max and Luna, scratching them both behind the ears. "You're becoming celebrities," she told them softly. "But what matters is that you've found each other." Dr. Chen approached her, his expression thoughtful. "Ms. Carson, these dogs represent something truly extraordinary. The way they've adapted to each other's disabilities, creating a communication system that compensates for their sensory limitations, it could revolutionize how we understand canine cognition and social adaptation." Sarah nodded, her hand still resting on Max's warm fur. "They're special, no doubt about it, but they're also just two dogs who need a permanent home, one where they'll never be separated." "Of course," Dr. Chen agreed, though his eyes still held the gleam of scientific discovery. "Actually, that brings me to a proposition. The university has a facility where we study animal cognition and behavior. We could provide them with excellent care, and they would contribute immensely to our research on adaptive behavior and interspecies communication." Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. A research facility, no matter how humane, wasn't a home. It wasn't a family. These dogs had already lost so much: their original families, their sensory connections to the world. What they had found in each other was something precious and personal. Could she really consign them to becoming research subjects, their bond reduced to data points and academic papers? As the sun began to set across the exercise yard, casting long shadows over the dogs and humans alike, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. The scientific interest in Max and Luna would only grow as word of their remarkable communication system spread. Yet her responsibility wasn't to science, it was to these two souls who had transcended their limitations by finding strength in each other. Somehow, she had to ensure that whatever future awaited them honored not just the wonder of what they had achieved, but the simple dignity of who they were, two dogs who had found in each other exactly what they needed to be whole. The morning began like any other at Oak Ridge Animal Shelter, the familiar rhythm of feeding, cleaning, and caring for dozens of animals seeking homes. Sarah arrived early, a cardboard tray of coffee balanced in one hand, her mind already working through the day's tasks. As she made her way toward Max and Luna's kennel, Jason intercepted her in the hallway, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "We have a situation," he said, keeping his voice low. "There's a woman here about Luna. She saw the local news piece that ran yesterday, and she's specifically asking about adopting her." Sarah nearly spilled her coffee. "Just Luna? Not both of them?" Jason nodded grimly. "She was very clear about that. Says she has experience with border collies and fell in love with Luna's story. She's waiting in the office." A cold weight settled in Sarah's stomach. This was the scenario she'd been dreading ever since Max and Luna's partnership had begun drawing attention. She handed Jason the coffee tray and smoothed her rumpled shelter polo shirt. "I'll talk to her. But first, I want to check on them." She found Max and Luna in their usual morning routine, Luna guiding Max to his water bowl after breakfast, their movements synchronized from weeks of practice. The border collie looked up as Sarah approached, her intelligent eyes tracking the kennel manager's every move. Max, alerted by Luna's shift in attention, turned his head toward the sound of Sarah's footsteps. "Hey, buddies," Sarah said softly, kneeling to greet them. Luna immediately came forward for her morning scratch between the ears, while Max followed more slowly, guided by the familiar scent. They looked healthy, happy, whole in a way neither had been before their chance pairing. The thought of separating them made Sarah's chest tighten painfully. In the office, Diane Mercer sat with perfect posture on one of the worn visitors' chairs. She was in her mid-50s, expensively dressed, with the confident air of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted. Her handshake was firm as Sarah introduced herself. "I was absolutely captivated by your border collie story," Diane said, her voice carrying the crisp enunciation of someone who had spent years in broadcasting or public speaking. "Such an intelligent breed, and to adapt so beautifully to her disability. I've had border collies all my life, my last one passed 6 months ago, and I'm finally ready for another." Sarah sat down behind her cluttered desk, choosing her words carefully. "Luna is indeed remarkable, but what makes her truly special is her partnership with Max. They've developed an incredible system of communication that allows them to compensate for each other's disabilities." Diane waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Yes, I saw that part of the story, very touching, but I'm specifically interested in Luna. I have the perfect home for her, 5 acres of fenced property, agility equipment, even a small flock of sheep she can help herd. I've worked with dogs with special needs before, including a partially blind Aussie. I understand, but in this case, Luna and Max have become a bonded pair," Sarah explained, leaning forward slightly. "They depend on each other in ways that go beyond typical companionship. We've made the decision that they need to be adopted together." Diane's pleasant expression hardened slightly. "Ms. Carson, I appreciate your concern, but I'm offering Luna an exceptional home tailored to her breed's needs. My property is designed for herding dogs. I have no interest in a senior golden retriever with multiple health issues. Surely you can see that splitting them up gives each the chance for a home suited to their individual needs." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Diane growing increasingly insistent. She offered a substantial donation to the shelter, referenced her connections with local media, and eventually asked to speak to someone with decision-making authority. Sarah maintained her position with a calm determination that belied the turmoil she felt. By the time Diane finally left, with a promise to escalate this matter, Sarah was emotionally drained. "That was intense," Jason commented, bringing her a fresh cup of coffee after watching Diane's Mercedes pull away from the parking lot. Sarah sighed, pushing her hair back from her face. "It's only going to get worse. The more attention they get, the more people will come wanting one or the other. We need to make their bonded status official in all our paperwork. Later that afternoon, as if to underscore the fragility of the dogs' partnership, an unexpected challenge arose. Reyes arrived for her weekly checkup and immediately noticed something concerning in Luna's behavior. She's favoring her right side, the veterinarian observed, watching Luna guide Max around the examination room. See how she's limiting pressure on that left jaw. Upon closer examination, Dr. Reyes discovered significant tartar buildup and inflammation around Luna's lower molars. She needs a dental cleaning, possibly extractions, she announced. And given the level of inflammation, we should do it soon. Sarah immediately understood the implications. That would mean separation overnight. Luna would need to stay at your clinic for the procedure. Dr. Reyes nodded, her expression sympathetic. At least overnight, possibly longer depending on what we find. There's no way around it, delaying could lead to serious infection. The dental procedure was scheduled for the following morning. Sarah spent extra time that evening preparing both dogs for the temporary separation. She worked with Max, helping him reacquaint himself with the kennel's layout without Luna's guidance. She brought familiar blankets with Luna's scent, hoping they would provide some comfort during her absence. When morning came, the separation proved even more difficult than anticipated. Luna seemed to understand something was happening. Her eyes followed Sarah's movements with unusual intensity as the leash was attached to her collar. Max, sensing the change in routine, became increasingly agitated. As Sarah led Luna toward the door, he gave a low, keening whine that made everyone in the room freeze. Luna immediately strained against the leash, trying to return to Max's side. The border collie's entire body language had changed, her usual confident posture replaced by visible distress. Max began pacing anxiously, bumping into the water bowl he normally navigated around with ease, his nose frantically searching for Luna's scent. I've never seen him this disoriented, Jason said quietly, moving to steady the golden retriever as he collided with the kennel door. Sarah knelt down, bringing Luna to Max's side one last time. Just for a day, buddy, she whispered, knowing he couldn't understand the words but hoping her tone might soothe him. She'll be back soon. The drive to the veterinary clinic was tense, with Luna sitting unnaturally still in the back seat, her eyes fixed on the road behind them. At the clinic, Dr. Reyes took special note of Luna's distress, promising to expedite the procedure as much as safely possible. Animals form strong attachments, she told Sarah, but this bond goes beyond anything I've typically seen. Their interdependence is so complete that separation creates genuine disorientation. I'll call you the moment she's ready to come back. The hours without Luna proved to be some of the most challenging the shelter staff had faced with Max. The normally gentle retriever refused food, paced constantly, and startled at every sound, his heightened hearing suddenly a source of anxiety rather than security without Luna's visual guidance to provide context. By afternoon, he had retreated to the corner of the kennel, his head lowered in what looked unmistakably like depression. It's like he's lost half of himself, Sarah observed to Jason as they watched Max through the kennel door. Not just his guide, but his sense of safety. Jason nodded soberly. Makes you realize how complete their system really is. He's not just blind without her, he's lost the communication channel they developed together. Sarah spent her lunch break sitting in Max's kennel, reading aloud as she often had before Luna came into his life. The golden retriever rested his head on her lap, but the anxious trembling of his body never fully subsided. When her phone finally rang with news from Dr. Reyes, she answered on the first ring. The procedure went well, the veterinarian reported. We had to extract 2 molars, but the rest was just a thorough cleaning. She's recovering nicely, though she's been extremely restless. How's Max doing? Not good, Sarah admitted. When can we pick her up? She should stay overnight for observation, Dr. Reyes began, then paused. But given the circumstances, if you're willing to monitor her closely, I could release her this evening. The separation seems to be causing more stress than the standard protocol can justify. By sunset, Sarah was driving back to the shelter with Luna in the back seat, still groggy from anesthesia but visibly more relaxed as they approached their destination. The border collie's keen eyes, though dulled by medication, seemed to recognize the familiar route. The reunion between the dogs became yet another chapter in their remarkable story, one that the shelter staff would recount to visitors for weeks afterward. As Sarah guided Luna back to their shared kennel, Max, who had been listlessly lying in the corner, suddenly lifted his head, his nose working frantically. Before Luna was even fully inside, he was on his feet, ears forward, body trembling with recognition. Luna, despite her post-surgical discomfort, went directly to Max, pressing her body against his with a whine that seemed to carry all the emotion of their separation. The golden retriever responded with a deep sigh that sounded almost like relief, nuzzling against her neck. Within moments, they had settled in their usual sleeping position, Luna's body curved protectively around Max's larger frame. "Look at his posture," Jason whispered to Sarah. "Completely different from 10 minutes ago." Indeed, Max's entire demeanor had transformed. The tension had melted from his body, his breathing had steadied, and the anxious whining had ceased entirely. Even Luna, despite having just undergone a significant dental procedure, seemed more at peace now that she was reunited with her companion. Reyes, who had followed Sarah back to the shelter to check on Luna's adjustment, watched the reunion with professional interest. "This goes beyond emotional attachment," she observed. "It's almost as if they've developed a shared nervous system. Being separated doesn't just cause anxiety, it fundamentally disrupts their ability to function." The brief separation had made one thing abundantly clear: these dogs couldn't thrive apart. The communication system they had developed wasn't just a convenient adaptation, it had become integral to their sense of security, their confidence, and their ability to navigate the world. What had begun as a practical pairing of two dogs with complementary disabilities had evolved into something far more profound, a partnership so complete that neither was whole without the other. As Sarah completed the day's paperwork that evening, she added a large red notation to both Max's and Luna's files: "Bonded pair, must be adopted together." Then, after a moment's reflection, she added, "Separation causes significant distress and functional impairment in both animals. Their communication system is essential to their well-being." The challenge now was finding them a home that understood not just their special needs, but the extraordinary nature of their connection, a home that would preserve and honor the remarkable bond they had forged from their individual brokenness. Fall had transformed the trees surrounding Oak Ridge Animal Shelter into a tapestry of reds and golds when the email arrived in Sarah's crowded inbox. 3 months had passed since Max and Luna's partnership had first captured local attention, and their story had since spread through social media, animal advocacy networks, and even a segment on a national morning show. The kennel manager had fielded dozens of adoption inquiries, conducted numerous interviews, and turned away several potential adopters who weren't prepared to accommodate both dogs' unique needs. "Sarah, you need to see this," Jason called from the front desk, where he was monitoring the shelter's emails. "I think we might have found them." Sarah looked up from the supply inventory she'd been struggling to complete, dark circles under her eyes testament to the shelter's perpetually understaffed condition. The email Jason forwarded was from a family named Ramirez, Elena and Michael, along with their teenage children Sophia and Daniel. They lived about an hour away on a small hobby farm with a renovated farmhouse. What caught Sarah's attention wasn't just their willingness to adopt both dogs, but the remarkable circumstances they described. "Michael is a retired audiologist who specialized in hearing impairments," Sarah read aloud, her voice growing increasingly animated. "And Elena is a former rehab specialist who worked with visually impaired patients. They're literally experts in both disabilities." Jason nodded enthusiastically. "Keep reading. It gets better." The email explained that the family had followed Max and Luna's story since it first appeared in local news. Their property included 5 fenced acres, a large home with few stairs, and a schedule that allowed for nearly constant supervision. Most compelling was their experience. They had previously owned a deaf Australian Shepherd, using hand signals and touch cues for training, and had volunteered raising guide dog puppies for a national service dog organization. "They understand both sensory challenges," Sarah whispered, almost afraid to hope after so many disappointments. "And they have actual training in disability accommodation." The Ramirez family had included photos of their home, the fenced pasture where the dogs could safely exercise, and the special indoor space they'd already begun preparing, complete with textured floor mats to help a blind dog navigate different rooms through touch. They'd even researched the communication system Max and Luna had developed, citing Dr. Chen's preliminary paper which had been published in an animal behavior journal. Sarah immediately reached for the phone, her inventory forgotten. The conversation with Elena Ramirez lasted nearly an hour, covering everything from veterinary care plans to the family's daily routine. Elena's knowledge of both visual and auditory impairments was evident in her thoughtful questions and the accommodations she'd already considered. "We've been following their story since June," Elena explained, her voice warm with genuine enthusiasm. When we saw how they'd created a communication system that compensated for each other's disabilities, it just resonated with our whole family. Michael and I spent our careers helping people navigate similar challenges. As Elena spoke about their experience with their previous deaf dog, detailing the hand signal system they developed and how they'd adapted their home environment, Sarah felt the knot of anxiety that had lived in her chest for months begin to loosen. When the conversation turned to Max's blindness, Michael joined the call to explain his ideas for helping the golden retriever map their home through scent markers and textured flooring, concepts that aligned perfectly with what the shelter had already implemented. "We'd like to visit them, if that's possible," Elena said as the call wound down. "We understand they've been through a lot, and we want to make sure there's a good connection before moving forward." Sarah scheduled the visit for the following Saturday, then immediately called Dr. Reyes and Dr. Chen to share the news. Both professionals offered to be present for the meeting, Dr. Reyes to evaluate the medical care plans, and Dr. Chen to observe how Max and Luna responded to the potential adopters. The morning of the Ramirez family's visit arrived with a crisp clarity typical of early October. Sarah had come in extra early to ensure Max and Luna looked their best, Max's golden coat brushed to a soft shine, Luna's black and white markings standing out sharply against her freshly bathed fur. The dogs seemed to sense something significant was happening, their usual morning routine marked by an unusual attentiveness to Sarah's movements. "Today could be the day," she told them softly, kneeling to scratch behind their ears. "These people might be your forever family." The Ramirez family arrived precisely on time, Elena and Michael in their early 50s, their teenage children displaying the mix of excitement and self-conscious restraint typical of their age. Sarah immediately appreciated how they entered the shelter, not with the boisterous energy of many visitors, but with a calm, measured presence that wouldn't overwhelm the animals. "Thank you for considering our application," Elena said, shaking Sarah's hand warmly. "We've been hoping for a chance to meet them." Dr. Reyes and Dr. Chen arrived moments later, introductions were made, and Sarah led the group to the shelter's meet and greet room, a space larger than the standard kennels, with comfortable seating for humans and a homey environment designed to help animals relax during introductions. Max and Luna followed Sarah confidently, their synchronized movement drawing appreciative murmurs from the Ramirez family. "Before we bring them over, I'd like to explain a few things about their communication system," Sarah began, but Michael gently interrupted. "Luna uses body pressure against Max's left side to guide him, with different intensities indicating different instructions," he said. "And Max alerts Luna to sounds through vibrations she can feel when they're in contact. They've developed at least 12 documented signals, according to Dr. Chen's paper." Dr. Chen nodded, clearly impressed. "You've done your research." "We've been studying everything available about them," Elena confirmed. "Our daughter Sophia even did her science project on sensory compensation in animals, using their case as her primary example." The teenage girl blushed slightly but nodded. "I got an A," she added with a small smile. Sarah felt a flutter of hope as she observed the family's genuine interest and preparation. So many potential adopters had been drawn to the heartwarming story without truly understanding the commitment required. The Ramirez family seemed different. They weren't just captivated by the narrative, they understood the science, the challenges, and the accommodations needed. With a nod from Sarah, Jason brought Max and Luna closer to the family. "We'll let them approach you," Sarah explained. "Luna will take the lead since she can see you, and she'll communicate your presence to Max." Sure enough, Luna surveyed the newcomers with alert interest, her border collie instincts evident in the way she quickly assessed each person. After a moment's consideration, she guided Max forward with her customary gentle pressure against his side. The golden retriever followed trustingly, his nose working overtime to catalog the new scents. What happened next surprised even Sarah, who had watched the dogs interact with dozens of visitors. Luna approached Elena first, pausing to allow the woman's scent to reach Max. Instead of the tentative greeting the dogs usually offered strangers, Luna pressed her body against Elena's leg in a gesture that looked remarkably like recognition. Max, following Luna's lead, extended his nose toward Elena's outstretched hand with unusual confidence. "They can sense you understand them," Dr. Reyes observed quietly. Elena remained still, allowing the dogs to investigate at their own pace. When she finally spoke, she addressed them in the same tone she might use with any thinking being, respectful, warm, but not condescending. "Hello, you two. We've been hoping to meet you for a long time." Michael knelt slowly, offering his hand for inspection as well. "Your communication system is remarkable," he said, looking between the dogs with genuine admiration. "We'd be honored to learn it." Over the next hour, the Ramirez family demonstrated not just their knowledge of Max and Luna's specific needs, but an intuitive understanding of how to interact with them. Daniel, the teenage son, asked thoughtful questions about their daily routine. Sophia produced a notebook filled with observations and ideas for enrichment activities suitable for both disabilities. Michael discussed potential home modifications to help Max navigate confidently, while Elena explained how they plan to maintain the dog's unique communication system. Throughout the meeting, Dr. Chen observed with professional interest, occasionally making notes. "The dogs are displaying remarkably low stress levels," he commented to Sarah. "None of the anxiety behaviors we typically see in shelter dogs meeting strangers." Dr. Reyes nodded agreement. "Their body language suggests comfort and curiosity rather than wariness." Indeed, by the end of the visit, Luna had settled comfortably beside Sophia, while Max leaned gently against Michael's leg, his usual tension around new people noticeably absent. When Elena suggested a short walk around the shelter grounds to see how the dogs responded to them in motion, Sarah readily agreed. Outside in the autumn sunshine, the group moved slowly along the shelter's walking path. Sarah watched with growing emotion as the Ramirez family naturally adjusted to Max and Luna's pace, intuitively giving Luna space to guide Max around obstacles, respecting the delicate choreography the pair had developed. "They already understand," Jason murmured to Sarah as they followed a few steps behind. "No training required." When they returned to the meet and greet room, Elena turned to Sarah with quiet determination. "We'd like to move forward with the adoption," she said. "We understand there might be a home visit required and more paperwork. We're prepared for whatever process you need." Sarah glanced at Dr. Reyes and Dr. Chen, seeking their professional assessment. Both nodded almost imperceptibly. "Actually," Sarah said, "I'd like to schedule the home visit as soon as possible. I think we may have found Max and Luna's forever family." The following weekend, Sarah drove the now famous pair to the Ramirez family's property for the final step in the adoption process. As her car crunched up the gravel driveway, she tried to temper her expectations. Even the most promising adoptions could fall through, and she'd learned to protect her heart through years of disappointments. The farmhouse stood on a gentle rise, surrounded by maple trees in full autumn glory. A large, securely fenced area extended from the back of the house, encompassing both open grassy space and a small grove of trees. The house itself was single-story, with wide doorways and few steps, perfect for a blind dog learning a new environment. Elena and Michael greeted them at the door, their genuine excitement evident but controlled. "We've been preparing all week," Elena explained, leading Sarah and the dogs inside. The interior of the home revealed careful, thoughtful preparation that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Textured runner mats created paths between rooms, providing tactile guidance for Max's paws. Small scent diffusers marked key locations, doorways, water bowls, sleeping areas, using the same lavender and vanilla scents the shelter had used to help Max navigate. Furniture had been arranged to create clear pathways, and the walls at dog height had been marked with different textured panels to help Max identify specific rooms. "The textures are for Max to identify locations by touch," Michael explained, "and we've added visual contrast markers at Luna's eye level for her navigation. Look here," he pointed to high-contrast black and white patterns positioned at Luna's sight line. "These will help her understand transition points even if she can't hear announcements or footsteps." Sarah followed the family through the house, noting how each room had been thoughtfully modified. The dog's designated sleeping area featured cushioned orthopedic beds placed side by side, with a night light providing the minimal illumination that helped Max distinguish basic shadows with his minimal remaining vision. Outside, the fenced area had been sectioned into different zones: a play area with safe, sensory-rich toys, a quiet garden space with aromatic plants chosen specifically for Max's enjoyment, and a large open section where Luna could run off her border collie energy within sight of the house. "We consulted with a veterinary behaviorist about creating an enriching environment for both sensory disabilities," Elena explained as they toured the grounds. "The different surfaces, grass, pea gravel, smooth stone, give Max additional navigational cues, while the visual markers help Luna understand boundaries without needing to hear commands." What impressed Sarah most wasn't just the physical modifications, but the way the entire family participated in explaining their plans for incorporating the dogs into their daily lives. Sophia showed Sarah the schedule she'd created for their care, while Daniel demonstrated the touch-based signals he'd been practicing to communicate with Luna. It was evident that adopting these special needs dogs wasn't just Elena and Michael's project, it was a full family commitment. As the tour concluded, Sarah watched Max and Luna exploring their potential new home with growing confidence. Luna guided Max through the living room with the same attentive care she'd shown at the shelter, but there was a new dimension to their exploration, a tentative excitement that Sarah hadn't seen before. When Max found the scented marker indicating his water bowl, he turned to Luna with what looked remarkably like satisfaction, his tail wagging gently against her side. "They already feel at home," Sarah said softly, her professional reserve finally cracking. "I've never seen them this comfortable in a new environment." Elena smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "We've been waiting for them," she said simply. "Sometimes the right family finds you, even if it takes a while." As Sarah completed the final adoption paperwork at the Ramirez's kitchen table, she felt the bittersweet mixture of joy and loss that accompanied every successful adoption, magnified tenfold by the special attachment she'd formed with Max and Luna. Yet watching the dogs settle into this home, with a family so perfectly equipped to understand and support their unique partnership, she knew she was witnessing something rare and precious, the perfect match. When it came time to leave, Sarah knelt to say goodbye to the pair who had changed so much at the shelter. Luna nudged her hand with typical perceptiveness, while Max leaned against her knee, his warm presence communicating more than words ever could. "You'll be so happy here," she whispered, stroking their familiar fur one last time. "They understand what makes you special." As she drove away, glancing in her rearview mirror at the Ramirez family standing with their new dogs on the porch of the farmhouse, Sarah finally allowed her tears to fall freely. But they were tears of completion, not loss, the culmination of a journey that had begun with a desperate solution to an overcrowding problem and ended with something approaching miracle, two broken beings finding wholeness in each other, and then finding a family wise enough to recognize and preserve the extraordinary bond they had forged. 6 months after Max and Luna's adoption, Sarah received a package from the Ramirez family. Inside was a bound journal documenting the dog's progress, dozens of photographs, and a formal invitation to visit their home. The images showed Max and Luna thriving, navigating their new environment with confidence, playing in the fenced yard, and sleeping curled together on their matching beds. But most remarkable was the video Elena had included, showing how the dog's communication system had evolved even further in their new home. Luna now used at least 20 distinct tactile signals to guide Max, while Max had developed specialized barks that vibrated against Luna's body to alert her to different sounds, from approaching vehicles to the doorbell. Chen's research paper on Max and Luna had been published in the Journal of Animal Cognition, bringing scientific attention to their unique adaptation. The study documented how their complementary disabilities had led to a sophisticated tactile sensory language that challenged previous understandings of canine problem-solving. The paper concluded that their partnership demonstrated neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and form new connections, at a level previously undocumented in companion animals with sensory impairments. Sarah visited the Ramirez farm on a crisp spring day, her heart swelling as she watched Max and Luna confidently navigate their home territory. The dogs immediately recognized her scent, greeting her with enthusiasm that brought tears to her eyes. "They remember everything," Elena explained, showing Sarah how they'd integrated the dog's communication system into family life. Each family member had learned to understand and use the dog's signals, becoming fluent in their unique language. Sophia, the teenage daughter, had created an illustrated guide to their communication system that was now being used by veterinary schools as a teaching tool. The unexpected legacy of Max and Luna's partnership extended beyond their own lives. Oak Ridge Shelter had implemented a new program pairing animals with complementary needs, discovering that many animals previously considered unadoptable could thrive when matched with the right companion. The shelter's Perfect Pairs initiative had already successfully placed 14 bonded pairs of special needs animals into forever homes. A social media page documenting Max and Luna's ongoing adventures had attracted over 100,000 followers, raising awareness about the capabilities of disabled animals and generating substantial donations for special needs rescue organizations nationwide. On the farm, Max and Luna had become ambassadors for animals with disabilities. The Ramirez family regularly hosted school groups, showing children how differences could become strengths when supported with understanding and accommodation. Luna guided Max through demonstrations of their navigation system, while Max showed how his hearing protected Luna from sounds she couldn't detect. Together, they proved that what might appear as brokenness could become wholeness when two beings found exactly what they needed in each other. If this story of remarkable adaptation and friendship touched your heart, remember that countless animals with special needs wait in shelters for someone to see their potential. Have you witnessed animals overcoming challenges in unexpected ways? Has a pet with differences changed your understanding of ability and disability? Share your experiences in the comments below. Every animal deserves a chance to find their perfect match, whether that's a companion who complements their needs or a family wise enough to recognize their unique gifts. Max and Luna remind us that our greatest limitations can become our most beautiful connections when we find the right companions to navigate life's journey. Their story isn't just about adaptation, it's about the extraordinary possibilities that emerge when we see beyond disabilities to discover the perfect wholeness waiting to be revealed.